Why are your fruit trees not producing? Hey guys, I'm Katrina with Homegrown Florida, and today we are back with another Q&A all around fruit trees. I'm going to be answering all your questions on how to get your fruit trees planted, pruned, and producing. Before we jump into all of you guys' really great questions, I wanted to introduce you to our new addition. This is a Sugar Bell Mandarin orange tree. And to be honest, I had sworn off all citrus fruits, but this guy is a little bit different. So we named her Sweetie, because we name all of our fruit trees. They're going to be with us for a while. We should have a name for them. But Sweetie here is not just any orange tree, or mandarin tree to be exact. She is a specially designed citrus tree that the IFAS department, so the University of Florida's Extension Department, has developed that is, believe it or not, resistant to HLB, which is the disease that causes citrus greening disease. Citrus greening disease has absolutely devastated Florida's citrus community. All those groves that you used to see, if you've lived here a while, when we drive down the road, you'd see huge acres and acres of groves of different kinds of citrus. Orange, lemons, tangerines, grapefruit. We had them in our yards. They were all over the place, and then slowly over the last probably 2 decades or so, they have just been wiped out. The disease is actually spread from a little bug that came over from another country. It's a little psyllid. It's a very tiny little bug that bites into the leaves, particularly the new growth. But what it does is it contains like a bacteria disease that when it bites into the tree, it comes a part of the tree's leaves, foliage, and then worst case, down into the roots. Once a tree has gotten citrus greening disease, there is no cure. There's no way to save that tree. It's going to die. It's only a matter of time. Well, since that happened, the UF has been working on lots of different varieties of citrus that can resist it. And this guy right here is one of the few, there are a couple others, but there is one of the few that you can grow in your home garden. Now, I got this guy from my extension office. I always tell you guys, the extension offices, the UF website is just so full of information. Well, they were doing a class around growing citrus in your home garden, and as part of the class, they gave you one of these resistant trees. And I was like, oh my God, finally I can grow citrus again, and I'm so excited. We're gonna put her in a pot today together. So the first question I got was from Grace, and she wanted to know, what were some of the different varieties of fruit trees that you can grow down here in Florida? I think she specifically asked about plums, apples, pears. So let's talk varieties a little bit. So the tree I have right behind me there is a peach tree. That peach tree is a low chill hour peach tree. It basically means that it only needs so many hours, and I think it's somewhere between 150 and 250 chill hours. And chill hours just means the number of hours below 45 degrees that your area gets. My area typically gets about 250 chill hours. I just did a consultation with one of the viewers down in Naples, and she has a peach tree and she's gotten fruit from it. And Naples is quite a bit distant south from me, so I was really shocked. But it goes to show you that these trees can really handle a lot less chill hours if you're willing to chance that out. So besides peaches, you can grow the Tropical Beauty, you can grow the Florida Prince. Right behind that, the one that looks kind of like a stick figure back there, is my plum tree. I have two. I prefer the plum varieties. They're called the Gulf series, so there's like 6 or 7 different kinds. I have the Gulf Beauty and the Gulf Rose, but there's a bunch of different kinds. When they were developing them for lower chill hours, they also developed them to withstand some of our fungal issues. Another one she asked about was pears. Now, I don't grow any pears, so I had to look this up. There are a few, and I mainly pick the ones that grow in Central or North Florida. South Florida, you guys, it's going to be really tricky because you guys don't get hardly any chill hours, and so there's just a few items that will grow down there, and pears don't seem to be one of them. So pineapple, Orient, Hood, and Florida Home were pear trees that I had found that had low chill hours that were recommended by the University of Florida, and I really picked the ones that seemed like they had good disease resistance. And then for apples, there's really only 2 apples. And this is mainly for our north and maybe north central Florida gardeners that can grow Dorset and Anna. Now besides those, the only one I was going to point out was he's way up front, but he is an avocado tree. We call him Cado. This is kind of the reverse, right? Avocados typically like warmer weather, so you folks down in South Florida, those are your trees. Up here and in North Florida, maybe not so great to pick. So I actually selected a variety that can handle a bit of cold weather once it's established. So the first year or two you want to protect it, but after that, once it's big enough and established and growing well, then, you know, it should be able to handle its own. That one that I selected was called a date avocado. And it looks a little less like a round avocado and a little bit more like a teardrop avocado. It's really pretty. And I'm sure you're curious by now, where do I get my fruit trees? I've been really leaning into greendreamsfl.com. My friend Pete over at Green Dreams, he has a YouTube channel. I'm sure you've seen it, but if you haven't, check it out. He's got really interesting stuff. From him, I've bought all kinds of stuff. Almost, other than the peach tree, everything else I have down this row, I got from Pete, including my jaboticabas, my bananas, some of my medicinal plants. He's got a host of things, and he'll ship it right to your house, which is awesome. Next question comes from Janice. Janice wanted to know when and how to plant fruit trees. So we have fruit trees, like those guys down the center there, and then you can break those into a couple different varieties, right? You can break them into tropical varieties that don't require chill hours, and then you can break them down into the ones that do require chill hours. And a lot of those are traditional or typical fruits that you're going to find in the grocery store. So your apples, your pears, your plums, your cherries, your peaches, nectarines, apricots, those all require chill hours. And it's really going to depend on your location as to whether or not you can grow those, and you're going to have to be really selective of the type of variety that you're growing, so that way you make sure that they not only grow and flower, but actually produce fruit. The next style of tree is the tropical ones. So these are going to be things like bananas, although it's not technically a tree, avocados, mangoes, lychee, loquat, and they don't require chill hours. What they do require, oh, the avocado, in case I didn't mention that. What they do require, though, is they like warm weather. And we do have a lot of warm weather. But if you're up in North Florida, I'm technically Central Florida, but I am the north part of Central Florida. I have to really be selective of the type of tropicals that I'm purchasing, so that way I don't kill them in my winters. This last winter was beautiful. I mean, we got no frost at all. But typically I get 2 or 3 frosts, and the year before last, I got temperatures 2 days in a row down to 23 degrees, and there's not a lot of tropicals that prefer that. Not a lot at all. I try to find the most cold tolerant fruit trees in that particular variety. And if I can't get a fruit tree that has a very high cold tolerance, and one of my examples is I have a jaboticaba, and that jaboticaba can't really handle things down below 40. So the way that I protect it is I make sure it's a tree that I can grow in a pot, like I'm going to do with this citrus. And then if it gets too cold, I can wheel it into my patio or into my shed over here for the coldest parts of our winter, which is only a few days. And then I can bring it back out. And it usually has a little bit of leaf damage, but it's perfectly fine. So that's usually how I do it. Now there's a second type of fruit, and that's going to be fruit bushes. So we're talking blueberries, blackberries. Then there's Barbados cherries. Some would say that an elderberry or a pomegranate is considered a bush. These are kind of like, you can grow them as a bush or you can grow them as a tree. It's kind of up to you. So those are all examples of the bush style. Besides that, then you have fruit plants. It's the only way I know how to describe it. So a fruit plant would be something like strawberries, pineapples, watermelons, cantaloupes, honeydew. These are items that are either grown as annuals or they're grown as perennials, but they tend to be small, short plants. A lot of them you can start from seed. Not all, but a lot of them you can start from seed. Then you have the vining ones. So kiwi, passion fruit, and then I'm going to throw in there something odd, not a vining, but just odd, dragon fruit. Basically grows from like a cactus plant. So all of these are different kinds of fruits that you can grow. Don't get stuck just that you have to have trees, because there's a lot of different kinds that you can grow that are not trees at all, in case you have smaller properties. Now let's talk about when is the best time to plant your fruit trees. There was a reason why I wanted to tell you that, is because when you plant your fruit trees is also going to depend on what kind of fruit tree you're growing. So if you're growing a fruit tree, bush, or plant that requires chill hours, then you're going to probably want to get that in either winter or early spring. Now the reason why is, one, you want it to get some chill hours. So it being in the ground helps with that. It being, here during the winter and getting it planted when it's dormant. Typically these guys go into dormancy. So when they go into dormancy, they're kind of just a bare stick like that. I don't know if you can see that, but that plum tree back there is just barely starting to leaf out now. It looks pretty much dead, but that's the way they come in winter. And you want to plant them then so that they can focus on root development, since they're not really focused on growing leaves at that point. Now, your tropicals, you can actually plant those in fall or spring, I would say. I would not be planting them in winter. They don't like winter. It's too cold for them, so it's just not the best time. Honestly, for me to grow tropicals, I almost always start them in spring, early spring. I want them to get established before summer comes. You might have noticed I didn't say summer for any of these. Summer is not the time to plant any fruit trees. I can't think of a single one. You can go down in the comments and let me know if I'm wrong here, but I can't think of a single plant that wants to grow or wants to be started in summer. I mean, they are dealing with pest activity. They're dealing with fungal issues, excessive rain, leaching out any kind of nutrients that they have. They are just struggling. And at the same time, you're trying to transplant them when they are their least strong. So summer is not a good idea. Now, fall typically is not the best idea. Now, you could start tropicals in fall, but they're going to be hitting winter very quickly. And so you're just barely getting them established before now they've got to fight for their lives in winter. And then you could start plants with chill hours during fall, but here's the problem with that is we get huge amounts of rainfall in fall, like not like that steady rainfall we get in summer. We get those deluges of like massive rainfall. And the problem with that is, disease, washing away, leaching the nutrients away from the plant that you put in. And then let's not forget, some of our most active hurricane season is in fall. And so that's why I don't like to put any fruit trees in. And I don't want them being ripped out of the ground and taken away by the next hurricane. So I stick to winter for non-tropicals and spring for tropicals. When I plant my fruit trees, and this is controversial because I put out a short about a year ago on how I plant my fruit trees, and there was like a lot of, comments that I'm going to kill everyone's fruit tree. Well, that was meant for us here down in the southern states and in Florida, where we do not have really good soil. And so what I do that was controversial is I dig a hole, which everyone should do, dig a hole, pull away the grass or anything else that might encroach upon it, create a perimeter around it. You want that so that you can keep, weeds and grass from competing with the fruit tree, especially in the beginning. And then I put down or mix in compost with the native soil. And then after I've mixed in compost with the native soil, I mix in a little bit of organic, very gentle fertilizer into that. I put a huge amount of water into that hole. I fill the hole completely up. I let it sink down, drain down, and then I do it again. Then I put my fruit tree in, I top it with some native soil, top it with a little more compost, top it with a little bit more of that nice, gentle fertilizer, and then I'm on my way. And I don't know if you can notice down here, all of them are still alive. Now they look a little dead right now because they're dormant, but I'll show you some close-up pictures that they are leafing out and they are growing. So it works for me. I don't know if it'll work for you if you get too much water on your property. Maybe it's not a good idea to do that. If you have clay soil, you know, that's different. You have to plant those differently. But if you're like me and you live here in Florida, where most of us deal with the same thing, which is sandy soil, then that's the way I do it. And I have never had a problem. And all my fruit trees, especially the ones I've had for a while, like peachy and cotto and lychee and the pineapples, they have all done very well, grown very well. There's been no stunting. It just does really well. That's the way I do it. And if you're interested in that video of how I put all these fruit trees in, I'm going to put that down in the description so you can take a look at it. Now, Kathy had the next question, which was around her elderberry tree. And she mentioned that she's had this elderberry tree for, I think, a couple years now. It's not flowering. It's not fruiting. And so my 2 reasons why a fruit tree might not be doing what it's supposed to do is it could be that it's too young. If it is too young, too short, then it's probably not going to fruit. It may flower and not fruit. That is a common thing as well. I've had that happen where it won't flower or fruit the first year, or 2 or 3, depending on the type of plant it is. But more likely than not, based on the way that she made it sound, is she's had it for a while, it's of good size, it should be flowering. And my elderberry was about 4 feet tall, and it started flowering. So I'm inclined to think one of 2 things. I'm inclined to think it's a watering issue, or it's a nutrition issue. And so let me tell you how I fertilize mine. For an elderberry, or for any tree, you want to fertilize basically 3 times. You want to fertilize right before they're supposed to flower. For most trees, that is at the beginning of spring. There is no point in fertilizing during the winter. Even if you have a tropical tree that doesn't truly go dormant like these citrus won't, it's just a waste of fertilizer. They're not trying to grow leafy greens in the winter, and you don't really want them to grow really leafy in the winter. You want them to get dormant. You want them to chill out, take a break. They're relaxing. Don't give them fertilizer. It makes no sense. You do want to fertilize them right before they need it. And that need usually occurs in very early spring. And for us here in Florida, if you're in the south, that's going to be around February. January, February. If you're in the central here, that's going to be about February or March. And if you're in North Florida, that's going to be about March. After that, once they flower and fruit starts to form and the fruit is kind of tiny, give it another feed. That's usually around the April, sometimes May timeframe, depending on the fruit. That's just to give them that little added boost that they need in order to continue moving through their production. And then the last time is after you've picked the fruit and they've gone through their huge growth spurt, then you want to give them one more feed to get them to leaf out, to kind of get over the fact that they just put all of their energy and food and everything into giving you this beautiful fruit. You want to give them a little extra feed. Now, I prefer 2 different kinds of fertilizers. So I go with berry tone or holly tone. Those 2 kind of work similarly for my berries. That's my strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, mulberries, elderberries. And then the other one I like to use for the rest of them is my Job's citrus and fruit fertilizer. And yes, I use citrus and fruit fertilizer on everything. Avocados, peaches, plums, pomegranates, everything. And Kathy, I almost forgot to mention the watering part. I don't want to get away from that too far. You want to water your fruit trees probably about every day, every other day for the first few weeks. And then you want to start slowly backing it off. slowly move to every 2 days, every 3 days, every 4 days, and start looking for when they're not happy. If they're starting to get like a little, I don't know, a little soft and wilty, that's when you know you've reached your peak. Back it up 1 day. So if you get to 4 days and they are starting to look wilty, back it up and water them every 2 days. And then just keep repeating that process as they get older, because as they get older, they need far less water from us. The rainfall handles it. They get their water from deep down into the ground. I never water my peach tree anymore. Never. So the next question came from Lisa, and a couple others I think kind of mentioned it, was how do you prune your fruit trees? And they were specifically talking about avocados, mulberries, and lemons. I prune my fruit trees in the winter solstice and summer solstice. Scientific longest day of the year and the scientific shortest day of the year. So when it is the winter solstice, most of my plants are dormant, and I choose to prune them for thinning and structure. So I prune a lot of the inside branches. I prune any branches that are crossing over each other. I prune for shape because I want it to grow in a certain direction. I don't want it to grow into my fence or into my house. So I'm trying to grow it up. Your situation might be different. You might be like, they can grow crazy, I don't care. Well, the main focus in that case would be making sure that that inside canopy doesn't get overwhelmed and then you attract pest and disease. So you want to thin out the inside of the canopy, leave the outside nice and bushy. During summer, I prune for height. This may not apply to all of you because maybe you live in a place that has a lot of room and you don't necessarily, oh, look at the roots on that. That's beautiful. Maybe you don't necessarily need your fruit tree to be compact and being careful around the distance and stuff like that. Well, I do. I do not have a large space. And so because of that, I have to keep my fruit trees very, very short. And so I use a book called The Grow a Little Fruit Tree. And this is a book that was designed and tested for growing fruit trees in small spaces. And they talk about pruning your fruit trees back significantly for height. And yes, I know you're going to ask, doesn't that decrease the amount of production? You are absolutely 100% right. It does decrease the production. The fruit tree will not produce as much as if you let it go wild. And that is okay with me. There's only 2 of us. That fruit tree right there that I keep small, that peach tree, gave me somewhere between 60 and 70 peaches last year, which it was our fill. And my husband, we jokingly call him the peach monster because he absolutely just loves peaches. After peach season is over, he's good for a while. He does not want to see another peach. He's eaten so many peaches. He's had his fill, and he just, honestly, at this point, I've kind of spoiled him. He doesn't even like to eat grocery store peaches anymore because they don't taste the same as the peaches from Peachy. So usually he just happily awaits for the next season. But if you wanted to grow a significant amount, you want a lot of space. So I would say that when you're looking around your yard and you're thinking, I want to put fruit trees in, but you have one fruit that you absolutely adore. Maybe it's mandarins, maybe it's peaches, maybe you absolutely love apples. I would say find the largest area of your yard and dedicate that one to the tree that you absolutely love, or trees that you absolutely love, that you are going to allow them to grow very, very large. You're not going to prune them down. And then use the rest of your yard where you maybe don't have a significant amount of space to use the grow a little fruit tree method, where during summer you cut it down to very short heights. I mean 5 to 7 feet tall. These things get tiny, they get robust, and they get bushy. And they are going to produce enough fruit for those fruits that maybe you don't eat in an excessive amount. And if you're interested in the Grow a Little Fruit Tree, make sure to head down into the description. I have my Amazon store and links to pretty much everything we've talked about today. And you can find the link to that book, Grow a Little Fruit Tree. It's a great read. It's a fun read. Even if you're not a big reader, you'll love the book. Now, the next question I got was on keeping strawberries as annuals or perennials. Now, I want to preface this. I grow my strawberries as perennials. Most people in Florida do not do this, and there is a reason. Our strawberries, actually, believe it or not, are more for cold weather. They're more for cold climates. And they don't particularly like or do well in our summers. They hate our summers. And I believe that now that since I've got them to grow in a green stalk, I will forever grow them in green stalks. And there's a main reason. Because I like to perennialize my strawberries, I need to be able to move them. When they lived in the beds and when they lived in the ground, once summer hit, like dead of summer, August, these guys get cranky. They are not happy. And the ones in the ground, about 50% of them died. But I suspect I can keep almost every single one of these alive through summer, because what my plan is once they're done fruiting, once all that beautiful little red berries come off and they're done and they start producing runners, I'll take the runners, I'll root them. But at the same time, I'm going to pick them up and move them to my shadiest spot in the yard, which is going to be right over there. That shadiest spot of the yard is going to give them a reprieve. And then I'm going to force them into dormancy at the wrong time of the year. So most strawberries go into dormancy during winter for our friends up north. Down here, they don't, because we have like the perfect winter for them. They love our winters. That's when they fruit. So what I do is I force them into dormancy. I move them to a super shady spot where, since they're not going to get hardly any sun, they start to slow their growth. And once they're there for about a week or two, I cut all the foliage off the top. I leave the crown in place. Don't disrupt the crown, but I cut all the foliage off. Once I've cut all the foliage off, I take a large heaping pile of mulch, and I'm going to be using leaf litter this year, and I'm going to cover them completely, the entire plants, with leaf litter. And what I'm attempting to do here is I am attempting to put them into a spot to basically tell them, hey, you need to be dormant. And then if I see any leaves pop up and out, I clip them off, and I just keep doing that until we get around September. And then I'll remove them from that spot and bring them back to this place that they seem to love, pull off a lot of that mulch, give them that feed that they need. They feed a little bit differently, but I'll give them that berry tone, because I'm like, hey, you guys need to wake up and start rocking. Even with that method that I'm talking about doing, I will lose some. I will lose a good amount. But that's why I take some of the runners, because if I can duplicate all of the plants, I have 30 and I can get 60 or 90. And even if I have a 50% loss on 60 or 90, I still end up with 45, which is 15 more than I had when I started, which was 30. So for me, it makes sense. But for you, maybe it doesn't make sense. And that's okay. You can get them berries annually. You can get bare roots. You can get actual plants. I wouldn't recommend starting from seeds. And the reason why I say that is the same reason why it's difficult for people to perennialize their strawberries here, because summer is rough. If you start from seed, you need to get those plants through, I think, 2 years before they're going to produce. And that means 2 summers. And that would be very, very hard here, especially with young plants that are not established, who've never fruited. And then Donna had a question about how to grow a lemon tree in a container. And well, Donna, we just did it together. I put Sweetie here in this container. I used Pro Mix. First and foremost, make sure you're getting a big container. I would say this is the smallest size that I would go with, but if you can get larger, the better. And Sweetie here is only going to live in this container for about 2 years, maybe 3 tops. I have plans of where I'm going to put her, but I have to wait and see how some of these other guys do to see if that actually pans out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to figure out something else. But I've got 2 or 3 years to figure it out, so I'm not worried about it. So with this guy, I used Pro Mix with some perlite. For the ones that are a little more acidic, I wouldn't use Pro Mix. I would use straight peat moss. Peat moss is a tiny bit more acidic, a tiny bit of compost, and some perlite. Keep it simple. Put them in, water them in, and leave them. And then in about, I don't know, depending on the season, if you're close to spring like I am, I will fertilize this in about 2 or 3 weeks. Once it's had a chance to really get adjusted to its area, I would fertilize it with a nice organic fertilizer, let it start growing, and then just make sure to keep it watered. At minimum 2 times a week, you need to be going through and checking all of your potted fruit trees to make sure that they're getting the water that they need. You do not want these to die after growing them up and working on them for years, and then die because you forgot to water. That would be tragic. I would put mulch on this, but at the extension office, they said that citrus trees don't really benefit that much from the mulch on top. In fact, it can have detrimental effects with this little root right here, where it has the, the trunk can cause like a root rot, and that can happen with some other trees. So you just want to be careful whenever you put mulch on a tree. You want to kind of pull it away from that spot so it doesn't work its way back over and keep it too moist in this particular area. I hope you enjoyed today. I really had a great time hanging out with you, putting Sweetie into her home for now. If you learned something new, make sure to give me a big thumbs up down below. Let me know that you liked the video, and let me know if you want to see more about fruit trees. Happy gardening, guys.